Hi, I'm Melanie Peterbaugh. My partner, Anna Paula, and I will be discussing eugenics and its effects on Rosemary Kennedy. I will be focusing more on the origin of eugenics and how it became so popular in the late 19th and early 20th century. So what is eugenics? Eugenics was a term created by Sir Francis Dalton, a respected British scholar. It was designed to eliminate undesirable human traits and characteristics through controlled breeding. Although it was not very prevalent in Britain, it was implemented and used in the United States starting in the late 19th century. Because it was so widespread in America, increased funding went towards the idea of ending negative traits as a whole. The Eugenics Record Office, ERO, was built in Cold Spring Harbor, New York, and was designed to target the poor, the lower class, and immigrants because that was believed to be the cause of unfit characteristics, not the lack of resources. Researchers of eugenics concluded that the only reasonable solution to rid the population of these traits was to sterilize the unfit in order to prevent these characteristics from being passed down. 33 states had sterilization programs by the early 20th century. Not only did they target those of a low social rank, but they also began to target alcoholics, the mentally ill, deaf, and blind individuals. Because these people typically did not have the ability to fight back, these surgeries happened without the individual's consent. It also did not help that these programs were run by the government, so they had little to no chance of escaping. 65,000 people were estimated to be sterilized. Since Hitler began to use the ideal of eugenics to justify his actions regarding the Holocaust, the United States abandoned eugenics as a field of study or even as a humane ideal that should be pursued. Now I will relate eugenics to one specific person, Rosemary Kennedy. Rosemary, sister of President John F. Kennedy, is widely recognized for her lack of intellectual abilities and how that inevitable trait led to a tragedy. Now Anna Paula will be telling Rosemary's life-altering experiences.
Hello, my name is Anna Paula Severo and I will be presenting the part of Rosemary Kennedy. Who is Rosemary Kennedy? Rosemary Kennedy was the first daughter of Rose Kennedy and Joseph P. Kennedy Sr. She was born on September 13, 1918 in Brookline, Massachusetts, and died in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin on January 7th of 2005. She had a great impact after her death on the rights of the mentally disabled. Her story created an inspiration to the growing America to allow mentally disabled to have a voice, to be able to control what happens to them. This story was brought into light after her brother, John F. Kennedy, fought for the rights of the mentally disabled during his presidency. Early life. Rosemary had a rather unusual birth experience. Her mother's doctor was scheduled to have a delayed arrival at her home to deliver Rosemary due to a raging pneumonia epidemic in Boston. Her nurse instructed her to keep her legs closed and even held baby Rosemary's head in the birth canal for a stunning 2 hours. What they didn't know is that doing this prevented the baby from receiving oxygen, which is known to produce disastrous effects on the brain. During her school years, she was sent to boarding schools, and while there, even tried to communicate with her parents through letters to prove to them that she could do well in school, just to get their affection and approval for her as their daughter. As she noticed all her other siblings leaving the house as they all grew older, Rosemary began throwing tantrums along with violent behavior, which led to Joseph desperately looking for a cure for his daughter. Rosemary's lobotomy. The lobotomy was an idea brought upon a Brazilian surgeon who passed on the idea to Rosemary's surgeon, Dr. Freeman. The doctor had tested 20 patients with this surgical procedure, and without a post-procedure follow-up, concluded all the experiments successful. However, many families were left unhappy with the results, describing the patients as the same person but with a lost soul. Joseph Kennedy, desperate to find a cure, signed up Rosemary for this procedure, many believe without the consent of even her mother. They numbed the area of the brain that was worked on and kept Rosemary completely awake and made her recite poems, and they drilled 2 holes in her frontal lobes. Once she stopped talking, they declared the surgery finished. Rosemary post-lobotomy. Rosemary was unable to walk or talk after the procedure and was placed into physical therapy until she was able to regain movement in her arms until a certain length and could make strange sounds with her voice. much like gargling noises. She had permanently inward legs, so she was put in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. After seeing the effects of the procedure, Joseph Kennedy decided to put her in a psychiatric hospital named Craig House. She was then hidden from the rest of her family, and in the 1940s was moved to St. Coletta's and stayed there until her death. After her father suffered a stroke, Rosemary was able to reunite with her family again, 20 years after not seeing them. She then died at age 86. Thank you for listening to our presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, if you have any questions, please raise your hands and ask.